Word of the day, protagonist, antagonist. Get this link, do file, make a copy. So, protagonist. Everybody say it for me. Protagonist. Good. Remember, this should be the only thing on your screen. Protagonist really is just your main character. And you can have more than one character, guys. Nope, protagonist is not. And I love that you said that, though, because I tricked you and I did it on purpose. Protagonist is straight up just the main character. So, how many of you raise your hand if you saw Megamind? Yeah, Megamind, even though he is evil, is still the protagonist, because he's the main character. Raise your hand if you saw Shrek. Same idea, that you've main character, right? What about Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas? Any of them, yeah. So, I think a lot of times in elementary school, they teach kids that the protagonist is the good guy and the antagonist is the bad guy. Wrong, not correct. Really, it's truly just that the protagonist is the main character. And they don't have to be the good guy. It was whoever the story is most focused on. So we are also going to talk about antagonist in a second. But everybody, before you have a chance to forget, give me an example right now of a different protagonist. So do your try box on this one, but don't turn it in yet. Okay, so give me any book, any movie, any video game, any TV show. Tell me who the main character is. That would be a perfect example for the try box for protagonist. Again, it's not the good guy. It's just the main character. Okay, so 2 people tell me your answer. Yep. Superman is the protagonist, and he happens to be the good guy, but if Superman was evil, he would still be the protagonist. Yeah. Rapunzel is definitely the main character. Okay, we're going to move on because that one's easy. So everybody, see over here. See how there's 2 vocab charts today? And that's because you really can't talk about protagonist without also talking about antagonist. So everybody click the second one. Antagonists are my favorite because antagonists can get really weird. Antagonists, you can really get creative and play around with them. So look at the definition here, guys. Antagonist is nothing to do with good or bad. Everybody say it first of all. Antagonist. Yeah, antagonist is just anyone or anything that's the main source of conflict, which means they're the main problem in the story for the protagonist. Let's turn our screens around just real quick. 3 screens, 2 screens facing forward, and did we make it? Yay, extra candy. So I have a weird story of an antagonist for you, because as a creative writer, anytime you do something that's different than what people are used to, it's making you more creative. It's making you stand out. It's making you more unique. So, how many of you have at least heard the name Shakespeare? Most people, right? Shakespeare is super famous. But even if you've never read any of his plays, this story is a great creative antagonist. So, there was this play called A Midsummer Night's Dream. And in that play, there are these 2 characters who are ridiculous. He made them really stupid on purpose. And they have the weirdest names ever. I love these names because they're so silly. Their names are Pyramus and Thisbe. Can you imagine going through life being named Pyramus or Thisbe? I love those. And Pyramus and Thisbe are the protagonists. They're the main characters. And their antagonist, their main source of conflict, the thing that's really causing all the problem in the story, is very creative. Pyramus and Thisbe live right next door to each other. They're in love. All they want to do is flirt, but there's a big stone wall in the middle of their houses, and their parents don't let them leave. So Pyramus and Thisbe just want to, like, you know, flirt with each other and whatever, but the stupid wall is in their way. That's the antagonist. Literally a wall. It's not even alive. It's a wall. And Pyramus and Thisbe end up dealing with their antagonist, their main source of conflict, by basically, like, kind of hitting out a little bit of the wall, and they can see like one eyeball at a time or one nostril at a time, and they can be like, oh, Pyramus, I love you, oh, Thisbe, you're so hot, or whatever silly thing, right? And that is ridiculous! And that's a really good example of thinking outside the box and playing with unique protagonists and antagonists. Yeah.
Is that just the original Romeo and Juliet?
It's like a really, really, really ridiculous version of Romeo and Juliet. So, I also, let me have you look at examples really quick. So, if in the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, if the Grinch is the protagonist, then if you think about it, Christmas itself is the antagonist, like the holiday. which kids wouldn't normally think of, right? But that's the main source of conflict for the Grinch, is the holiday. So that's a really unique one. And look at the first sentence, guys. Antagonists, they create conflict, and problems are what actually helps a story keep going. If you don't have a problem in a story, then you really don't have a story. So I've got a kind of ridiculous video to get this stuck in your head for forever. Plus it's going to give you some ideas, but keep those screens facing forward for just another minute here.
Who is the antagonist? Alashma. Every good book needs conflict, whether it's a showdown with the scariest, most evil wizard of all time, or the heroine trying to decide who to take to the big dance. It takes at least two to tango, or to duel. And conflict just wouldn't be conflict without an antagonist.
Oh, we have to find this focus.
There they are. So how do you identify the antagonist in a novel? Well, simply put, the antagonist is the villain or otherwise nasty character in the novel that you root against. You know, the person who stands in the way of the protagonist. You should know by now, however, that literature is never simple. Yes, many times the antagonist is clearly evil. He's the guy who, if you saw him coming down the street, you'd move to the other side. Sometimes though, the antagonist is a traditional other figure, the person who finds himself on the opposite side of the tracks from the person who is lucky enough to have his name on the cover of the book. And if the protagonist is an anti-hero, the antagonist might be someone who is traditionally considered a good guy. In Paradise Lost, Satan is the person.
So this one was shocking when this novel came out. This was like hundreds of years ago. And during this time, people were very, very, very religious. And this novel came out where the protagonist, the main character, was someone who was clearly evil. And people were super offended. And they were like, that is not allowed. Your main character, your protagonist cannot be evil. But that's not true. Because protagonist and antagonist have nothing to do with good and bad. So that was a very popular story because it was so shocking that people didn't know what to do with such a unique protagonist.
Making the big G-O-D the antagonist of the story.
And again, nothing with good or bad. It's just in that situation, that character is the one who's getting in the way of the other character. So that is the antagonist. Nothing with good and bad.
God, Satan, or the spawn of Satan either.
Cute.
It can just be a person or entity with an opposing point of view.
So I read a novel recently where this was the antagonist. That this was a city where the whole town got cancer because of their antagonist, which was this big corporation that was breaking the law and was spewing really, really toxic stuff into the atmosphere and into the soil. And everybody in the town was insanely sick, and they had to fight against that problem, which was a whole group of people.
Whether it's a rival sports team.
I also really like this one because just because another team is trying to beat a different team, does that mean that one of the teams are evil? No! It's just one of them is in the way of the other team. So one of them is the antagonist and one of them would be the protagonist. And then I'm going to make the screen go to sleep for just a second because it's not totally school appropriate here.
Finally, the antagonist might not even be human.
Like Tom and Jerry, right? Your antagonist, like the wall. It doesn't even have to be something that's alive. Okay.
It could be anything from a maybe mythical white whale to unachievable hopes and dreams. Simply humanity in general. Whatever or whoever throws up major roadblocks for the protagonist. So when you have your eyes peeled for the antagonist, remember the following. The antagonist opposes the protagonist and is usually the source of all the conflict. However, the antagonist isn't necessarily evil. He or she just has a conflicting point of view. And the antagonist, well, might not even be human.
Okay, so before you turn your screens around, just making sure. This vocab today, normally the assessment is worth 2 points, but on this one it's 4 points because you have to give me an example for protagonist and an example for antagonist that's not already on the chart. Go ahead. And you can see my picture on this one is donkey. And donkey, you wouldn't normally think of antagonist, right? But Donkey really gets in Shrek's way a lot. And so even though he's a really fun, nice character, he's still the antagonist. He's causing a lot of the conflict. So give me your example and then go turn in your vocab chart.